Titans are going to be able to find that. Leviathans will be your first pick, and this is something worth mentioning because it doesn't come up as often. They haven't been, well, I guess they were on Friday, but that harkens to the point. When they start a set first pick, they have not lost that set in Phase 2.
Wow.
They have lost a couple of games as first pick. They have not lost that big ol' set, and so that's going to make a interesting time here. Either the Titans are going to break a streak or the Leviathans are going to continue one. They take out the Artemis, the Erlong, and the other side, Hell, already getting banned away. I know I've seen a lot of people, and Bobby, I'm sure you're one of them, where Hell is on the forefront of their mind of gods they do not want to see today.
Yeah, Hell, Yemoja are two of the gods I just do not want to see today, and that Erlang ban is actually super strong because of how strong that 2v2 is. On Friday, I talked about it, that the 2v2 so far has kind of dictated this this tournament so far, and that Erlang in the level 1, level 2, even level 3 brings out too much pressure, has too much damage, too much kill potential, that you just kind of got to get rid of him and put layers on something else.
But it does leave his Osiris available. It could go towards something like the Ratatasker. Layers has a very deep god pool. I think it is also worth noting this Artemis ban directly targeted at Cyclone Spin. The performance we saw from Cyclone Spin yesterday cannot be repeated. I mean, you got to tie that one up, put it in the forbidden text, and forget about it, because if he is allowed to even have 50% of the performance that he did yesterday, I think the Tartarus Titans take this in 3. That is how dominant he was out of the Hunter role. So removing this Artemis, I love it. I think it's just perfect. And Artio as well. I'm with you, Bobby. I don't like seeing healers.
Actually, you said all of that, and the only thing I think yesterday there was a point where Zap was talking to us, and they were talking about the fact that sometimes, like, if scrims are going poorly for them, Yarkor will lean back and be like, maybe I don't make this switch, right? Like, maybe I stay carry for the team. And so he's probably hoping for just as good a performance as he's had the last few days. You had mentioned it just now, Mifflin, but Artio banned out by the Leviathans. Titans looking for their final ban. And this healing has been very prominent all weekend. I mean, we have seen the Hells, we've seen Yemojas, we've seen these Artemises. We haven't seen, like, Chang'e, Sylvanas, or Aphrodite, probably for good reason.
Don't jinx
but, like,
us. don't jinx us, Score. Come
Why
on.
not?
What do you mean, why not? We're just talking about we don't want to see the healer. I want a good,
You're telling me
clean...
you wouldn't be excited for a Chang'e game?
No.
Okay, well, what if it's Chang'e jungle, Bobby?
No, even then, just keep
Is
the
DJ
healers
playing?
on the bench.
Well, the Heimdall ban comes out from the Titans here, and so the Leviathans get to opt for their first pick. The Tiamat, Bobby, has been glanced over a lot. Like, yesterday there were games where just straight up not picked, and here it's getting picked behind Osiris. What happened?
I mean, Tia is still an unreal pick. The amount of damage, pressure, everything she pushes, I mean, not pressure, amount of damage and then just like late game kind of team fight, how hard she is to kill is super, super strong. But right now, this 2v2 meta is way too important for Tia to be able to play in the matchup and not get pressured out. You've seen those Hells in mid, a bunch of other just like level 2 gods in mid lane, that Tia just does not have the strength of those gods, and she's not going to be prioritized as much.
Yeah, and it makes sense that we're not seeing the Tiamat prioritized so high up, because every other meta mage is still available. Morgan Le Fay's out there, the other Morgan, the Morgan, still available as well. Persephone available, so you don't have to immediately go towards your mid-mage. So the Leviathans elect to take away one of Layers' best picks inside of the Osiris, and that leaves the Titans in a position where they can take their pick of the litter with the mages. And of the mages still available, Tiamat may not be as strong as she once was, but I still, for my money, think she's probably the best mage in the game.
Odin and Tiamat locked in there for the Titans, and they only got one Tiamat game in yesterday, and you'll never guess what happened. Paul won with it, so looked good on that pick. Serket locked in on the other side. And this has been another thing we've seen a lot lately, this Osiris plus Serket, these kind of combos. Now with Origin on there, still worth mentioning,
Scary.
Undefeated for the Leviathans every time that they have locked it in and played it so far this phase. Inbound, I mean, this is a scary lineup.
Yeah, and Raijin is one of those pressure gods in the early game. Level 1, 2, 3. He's got kill potential, lane clear, good 2v2. And then you look at the Osiris Serket, and they're just good flex gods. Serket's probably going to go support, but Panatom can always play it. Osiris is probably going jungle, but can always go solo to Yarkor. So they have these good flex potentials and this good 2v2 coming out from that mid laner.
Nothing but power for them. Also, this Khepri, Mifflin, this one kind of caught me off guard. Yesterday, like, to the point nobody else was playing him, and then he becomes a first pick in the King's Titan set where people are grinding for it and arguing over who's going to be able to pick him up. I mean, the ult's powerful, but is he someone that is so strong in this meta right now?
Look, to this day, and even before the playoffs, I go into every ranked game, I ban Khepri. It is one of the most frustrating gods to play against. There is no worse feeling than rooting your opponent, just completely routing him inside of a team fight, dropping him down to 5% HP, and then Scarab's Blessing shows up, and you're like, okay, so I can either kill him and reset him back to his support, or I let this man walk away from me that I've already worked so hard and committed so many resources to killing. And that's not the only thing that makes Khepri good. His engage is strong. Abduct is a great tool to burn beads. You're going to have the root from a range as well. You can give your team defense with a second ability. This is a very versatile pick. I think that Khepri is in a similar spot to Ymir in that every 4 or 5 months, they kind of just come in and out of the meta. People forget that he exists and then remember, oh wait, reviving my teammates are just good. And when you have a composition with gods like Tiamat, with gods like Ram, you're going to have great targets for the Scarab's Blessing. Ram goes up into the air when he's getting dove, buys you a ton of time for this Khepri to get in position to just walk up and press 4. Tiamat's going to carry you in a late game team fight. Maybe I just keep her alive and she can keep doing it for me.
Plus, we've seen how essential these ROM snipes have been in a lot of these fights, taking out backliners immediately. Catch up on the bans, though. Kabrakan, Cerberus taken out by the Titans. Izanami, Ratatosker banned out. So a couple of shots towards Cyclone, and then a shot over there towards Layers as well. You had mentioned the ROM getting locked in, but now we jump back to the Leviathans. Kakullen is their pickup for the solo lane, and inbound, this has been, and was for the longest time, the pick for Yarkor. Once he swapped back over there, it felt like the only thing he was playing was this Kakullen. They also get the Jingwei for Zap. Feels like a good way to round out their team.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of how they draft. Like, this comp is just something exactly what they wanted. They get Panatum on that god that can force pressure everywhere on the map, kill potential almost anywhere. They get the solo pressure, they get jungle pressure, good 2v2, and then they have Zap playing something safe, far back, can live in those team fights and just crit away.
But Zapman and Layers, the guys that we interviewed earlier on, they're on a team together earlier on in the phase. They part ways. They meet together again here in the finals.
What a wild ride Phase 2 has been, man. And
Hasn't it?
It set us up for a really fun final set, I think. I mean, not just that Layer Zap storyline and the fact that we've seen a lot of Smite from both of these teams, as you mentioned, both having to play in the quarterfinals. I mean, think about the routes the Tartarus Titans had to take in order to get here. They had to beat the Jade Dragons and then the Camelot Kings in back-to-back sets, and they really dismantled the Kings when you watch that set back. So I'm impressed with what the Titans have done. Honeymoon phases, we talk about them a lot when it comes to roster changes, and if you doubted their strength, I think you need only look at who we've got in the finals here today, because both these teams playing really good Smite, and a lot of it's because of these new roster additions.
Yep, the Titans dismantled both of the teams they played this weekend. The Leviathans looked great.
Perform and do a little bit more in these team fights than Shinto on this Raijin, and that opens up these drafts a little bit for the Titans. So in that sense, I think this game 1 carries a little bit more weight with how similar the god pools are in the mid lane.
Might see a little something on the right side of the map here. Layers takes a chunk of damage from Yarkor, and the first ultimate of the set gets spent. And it's Benji with the cage around Yarkor. Bat out of hell swoops through, and the last bit of damage kicks in, and it's Layers with first blood in the Phase 2 finals.
Yeah, that's just simple cutting there for the Tartarus Titans. I mean, Yarkor, his jump is down. Oh, okay, I'll just come in and ult him because I'm Odin, and that should be a pretty free kill for us most of the time. Good identification by the Titans, and Benji facilitates killing frontline really, really well because you've got a long duration CC that isn't affected by diminishing returns, and that's usually the qualifier.
1v1 here between Zapman and Cyclone Spin wins it. Zapman can't even get his ult off. Cyclone Spin didn't need to use it. Good old auto attacks finishes that one off. Both builds were in the same spot, and Cyclone Spin just hits more.
And now he's going up for more. Panatom is going to live through all 3 snipes, even if they land, so not going to be another kill for the Hunter. But can you blame him? Can you blame the man for feeling himself a little bit after Steve dashes in that matchup? Just not the advantageous position that Zapman expected.
Wrong you taunts Aurora back in here. Shinto rotating over with a Rod of Tahuti first item on this Raijin. A bit different, a bit of a segue away from what we normally see.
It's been Charon's first the vast majority of the year, but after a couple of nerfs to it, it's just a little bit too low power in order to continue. I like this switch up. If you got the gold, spend it. And Rod feels so good on this god as it is. Getting it early, yeah, it's expensive. You know, you used a lot of gold, but you've got one of your major power spike items.
Oh, this could be a run back of what we saw earlier. Yarkor gets a nice double knock up The Bat Out of Hell needs 1 or 2 more swoops, and Layers hits them both. Yarkor down yet again. Panatom trying to close the gap, but it's a Scarab's blessing onto Layers. It will not get procced. And so Layers will be in a bit of an awkward spot here. It's a stun down, a toss back from Wrong but Layers lives on.
Oh, and it's Panatom who's actually in trouble.
Shinto!
Shinto's Tycho drums don't do it, but Percussive Storm will.
Now he's trying to kite backwards as the rest of the Tartarus Titans walk back in. It's a 1-for-1 trade on right, and Yarkor has not been able to roam free just yet. A level down.
That was part of the strategy there for the Jade Dragons. I mean, it's Dan Zaburo, you know, picking for the solo kill, and Panicat was doing that pretty consistently, looked very strong in that set, but Cyclone was still managing to come in and be impactful in the late stages. If he can get off to a good start, then imagine what he can do.
The cavalry is here. Beads for Cyclone Spin will get used a little bit late, but he doesn't have his ultimate. Panatom jumping into the back line. A great Scarab's blessing from Aurora, but Cyclone Spin turns around the damage, and he runs away.
No!
Get another as well. Panatom at least able to pull one back, but now the chase is on, and the Osiris will get knocked up, pulled on back. And the Leviathan's able to strike Pater with 1, but the Titans turn it around for 3.
6-2 in just 9 minutes for the Titans, and it's centered around the side lanes as Benji just solo killed Yarkor on the right side of the map. Do the Leviathans know we started kind of late, Dave?
You're right.
What's going on?
They
I
had
mean,
plenty of time to get coffee and
right.
food. And
Yeah, no excuse for not waking up in time for this one, man. The Leviathans just off to a very slow start, and the Titans look locked in. We can't get that kill, and we can't make that play happen.
Man.
And he's aggressive at the same time. It's really, really difficult from this type of position to try and come back into it up against a Kepri.
And who's now on the Gold Fury with Aurora as they walk away. Considered it, but won't commit. From like an average player perspective, that Scarab's blessing goes on me, and I'm like, all right, that's my chance to get out. The fact that Cyclone Spin sticks around, goes back in, shows some confidence that he's got. Maybe we send everyone towards Benji, and that'll help out. Unfortunately, the cage has slowed down Yarkor to jump in from Panatom. Wrong is here as well, and it's going to take everyone to get a kill onto Benji, but there is a kill nonetheless. That'll open up the door. I go to Gold Fury on left.
And exactly what the Titans need to be doing in those moments. If they want to send the farm in order to kill Benji, sure, they'll get him. You know, there's not a whole lot that he can do.
It seems like, and you know, you call it the honeymoon phase, and I think that's a pretty apt description. Feels like all the pieces for this Titans team through the weekend, and at least here in Game 1, are starting to connect. Yarkor, you get assisted on a kill a moment ago, but the rest of the Titans are now going to close this gap. Panatom may be playing with some confidence now. Looking to chase down Layers, who will bat out of hell on a way. Aurora CC'd on down, and Scarab's blessing will keep him right where he is. And the help arrives yet again, and the Leviathans give a kill to Yarkor.
And Zapman's over here. I mean, they sent everyone to make sure that this was a defend. The Titans, I mean, Spectral Armor's already done for Layers. Spectral on the way, I'd assume. For Benji. Dominance for Cyclone Spin. I think once that dominance gets finished, I'd expect a true grouping from the Titans.
Wrong, you'll have to scatter himself on a way, but Benji, when you see that shield pop up, something's brewing. And Benji walks in towards Shinto, who will have to Thunder Crash away. It's a blink in, though, from Wrong You. It's connected onto Benji, who has took no damage at all. A big knock-up, though, from Yarkor to the Tier 1 tower. This is maybe where the Leviathans have elected to defend. A stun onto Yarkor, though, will force him to dash away.
But that's an odd one to try and defend, Dave. It's a Tier 1 tower worth very little, also going to contribute very little to you on the defense. So that's a lot expended. I mean, Blink ult from Wrongu, Blink Thorns, and ult from Yarkor. And that should be enough, yeah, for the Titans to be able to think about doing this. This is not guaranteed by any means, but I don't mind this call.
How quick is the rotation from the Leviathans? It's got to be quick. This Fire Giant is already down to half. Wrongu is close by. Yarkor is also close by. Neither of the two of them have Blink. Benji drops the cage on around, and Wrongu is down before he's even walked in. One last snipe from Cyclone Spin will finish it. He's got it. Zap. On the other side of the fight, Zapman's all alone, and he'll join his teammate in the grave. Now the Tartarus Titans with the two-man advantage surge in.
How? What? Who, when, where, why is Zapman in the back line? I don't understand how he got there, but he didn't get anything off. Died in the midst of the airstrike, had both his relics, and it just didn't matter. And the Leviathans just came into that fight so scattered, didn't have great ward coverage as expected on an objective like this, so it's difficult for them to face check. Both their frontliners had used their ultimates, and the Leviathans just get so split up.
One is or working towards one as well. And the Titans rolling the Leviathans in game number 1. We are 21 minutes in, and we're already looking at a Phoenix defense here. And that feels extra bad because Shinto's kind of had about a half to 1 level lead over Paul this entire game. That's a lot of what the Leviathans like to do. And that fight right there, as you talked about reasons that we couldn't see the power spike in Shinto, that's where you would have wanted to, because this Raijin is in a great spot to impact this fight, and we just didn't get to see it there from Shinto.
Left side Phoenix, and this, Dave, I don't like, because you have one wave to make this count. 30 seconds. It's going to take another 30 seconds for the next wave to get here.
You're rolling the dice for what could be a massive advantage, but also a massive disadvantage if you lose this fight. Cyclone Spin checks Shinto's health bar a little bit with the snipes. Wrong, he was blinked in, but has been taken way, way too low to stick around. Now the Tartarus Titans walk in with that health advantage. Cage out from Benji, traps Yarkor right where he is. Zapman with the airstrike out and away. Shinto sends the Taiko drums flying, but it's caught basically on an 0 on the Tartarus Titans. They've called the Leviathans on their defense, and no one is there to answer. 2 members of the Leviathans down. Will the Titans look to end?
They got a wave coming. I just don't know if they can, Dave. They might have to just settle for another Phoenix. Settle, by the way, for cracking 2 Phoenixes 23 in.
Oh no, Zapman doesn't have Aegis. He doesn't have ultimate. He's got beads, but I'm not sure that's going to be enough. Melt it down. Layers on a rampage. Titans in 24 minutes dominate the Leviathans.
What a statement win to kick us off here for the Phase 2 playoff finals, huh? I mean, the Titans just come in and make it look easy. Both side lanes just absolutely crushing in the early stages. Layers everywhere.
Kind of thinking that this was going to be a more or less Leviathan's game, and as time went on, especially because they have so much going for them, they were going to be able to create a giant amount of space, but inbound, it didn't happen.
Nah, Lairs
Never.
kind of did what Panatom usually does, which is just forcing fights in both side lanes and just trying to pressure out the enemy duo or solo as much as he can. And Panatom really didn't look for too much, while Lairs was looking for stuff almost off of cooldown. As soon as that ult came back up, he would go to a side lane and just look for a gank. I think it got the Titans up like 4-0, 5-0 before Panatom even started looking for something.
Yeah, this game was massive jungle diff, and it's not often you get to see that, or say that rather, in the current meta. Junglers don't usually make that kind of difference, but Layers absolutely does this time around, and the Tartarus Titans, with that lead out of the soul lane, were able to establish a lot of dominance throughout the early neutral objective team fights. Were going their way for the vast majority of this game as well. Got to see more from Panatom, man. He's got to match at least some of that pressure. You don't have to fight Layers. You don't want to fight into this Camazotz in the early game because of how much damage he does. Okay, ignore the soul lane. Panatom can still go mid, could still have gone in the duo lane, but instead just really was kind of absent throughout this one.
Yeah, 7-1-2 for him, an 8.0 KDA, 5.0 there for Cyclone Spin. And of course, there's some interesting plays throughout his reel. He had a lot of good damage as well. But realistically, the only thing that Cyclone did that really mattered the most was he soloed Zap that one time, and that's what everyone's going to remember this time around. But the Titans start off really well, and they do not like, I mean, look at the damage numbers. It's not like they did anything insane. They just controlled the game early on. What was it, a 24-minute game? So it is just a game where they started out winning and then win. Game number 2, one that we've had a lot of discussions on, maybe the most pivotal in a Game 5 set. The Titans are opting to be second pick again.
I think something you kind of got to look for is also Aurora on this Khepri. It kind of mitigates a lot of that pressure that Panatom can put out, that Ronnie can put out. Maybe that was some of the force of why Panatom didn't feel like he could play as aggressive as he wanted to. Same with Ronnie, because that Circuit feels very, very bad to play into a Khepri. Circuit wants to be able to just run around the jungle, use her movement ability, just travel around as much as she can, and Khepri kind of stops that. Both his pull and his root are undearable, so he can just lock down the Circuit for a while, and then Shredder prots with this too.
It's just a lot of the same here in Game 2 so far. The ban's largely the same. Odin, an early adaptation here from the Leviathans. I think that you're right, that Khepri does a lot to shut down that early aggression from the Osiris, but that's nature of Khepri. You kind of got to burn through those resources. If you put a ton of respect onto Scarab's Blessing, they don't have to use Scarab's Blessing. The threat of it was enough to stop the Leviathans in Game 1. You can say the same thing about Beads. I don't want to CC that guy. I'm not going to use my Ragnarok, my Stygian Torments on someone with Beads. They're just going to CC a unit. Somebody has to be out there burning these resources. You can't lose your confidence this early on. And speaking of confidence, the Tartarus Titans are playing with an absolute ton of it. That was raw aggression that netted them that game.
I mean, I know Hindu had posted it on Twitter, but if you go look at it, there was a moment where he had messaged, because he sent it out to like all the pros, like, hey, just in case worst case happens, you want to come into the studio, be on the desk? And Aurora just replied, we're winning. And that was it. It was not, like, there was no conversation like, but yeah, I'll come in if that happens. It was, no, I'm going to
You put
win.
a period on that.
Yes, it was emphasized for them. And so you can tell that they're feeling that way so far this Sunday. Miff, you had touched on this, but the band's pretty much the same, save for one. Artemis, Erlong, and now the Odin taking place of where Ardia was. On the other side, it is once again the Hell, the Emoja, and the Heimdall. Osiris first pick. And you had said, Bobby, that it wasn't necessarily changing up in the jungle as much as it was the style of the jungle. It's not a bad pick for Osiris. It's not bad for Panatom, but he has to play differently.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Leviathans are just getting caught in this trap that the Titans are kind of setting up for them. They're kind of leaving these 3 very strong gods forward that the Leviathans take 1, the Titans take 2. Last time it was Osiris trade for Odin Tiamat. This time it's an Osiris trade for Ardio and then potentially this Tiamat also, netting the Titans a lot of damage, a lot of healing, a lot of solo pressure, and then just allowing this Tiamat to be able to get to that mid game.
I thought this RDO is something the Leviathans were kind of fishing for here, hoping that the Titans would leave it up for another phase of bans, because Yarkor has had a lot of success on this pick in the past, and getting as camped as he was in Game 1, and I'm not going to mince words, dude was getting pushed in by like 4 people from like the 5-minute mark onward.
Yeah.
Yarkor was not allowed to play. RDO is a pick that has relative good safety. It's going to give you a stun. It has a cripple field. You can sustain yourself. It's got a great disengage with a heavy charge. So it makes sense that that's what the Leviathans were aiming for, but the Tartarus Titans respond in kind. Take it for themselves and strip it away. But this Cerberus pick has worked out pretty well into Ardio in the past. You can interrupt her channeled abilities. You steal some of that healing for yourself as well, and has good CC, can buy some time inside of these ganks. If the Titans want to jam it down Yarkor's lane one more time, they're going to execute much better against the Cerberus.
And the Cerberus was one that was actually banned away from him last time around before he went to the Kukulkan, so they are able to scoop that up. Raijin, someone worth mentioning, lost his undefeated streak here for the Leviathans. Not something that you get to see often. They've been doing so well with that pick. And yeah, you know, Aggro and Dave on the cast said, oh, well, it wasn't the mid laner's fault. And, you know, their thing, their whole
That's
shtick,
Aggro's thing,
that
man.
they're mid laners, yeah. But, hey, he still lost, and that's what matters, I think, at the end of the day. Khepri locked in again for the Titans. And Bobby, I mean, this one, you had kind of touched on it earlier, but like, I see Tiamat, I see Ardio, I see Khepri, I see 3 really, really hard to kill. Like, I don't even care what the bottom 2 are. That just feels good.
Yeah, they have a very good comp that kind of mitigates what the Leviathans kind of looked for in Game 1. But I like that the Leviathans kind of went away from their Game 1 style of that Circuit. They kind of just now have this more AoE style that you get from a Cerberus, a lot of lockdown, a lot of damage, some anti-heal. I like their comp. Going away from that Circuit, waiting to see if they're going to go with the Khepri again no matter what, and then pick from there.
Yeah, the Raijin's going to be able to spread damage throughout these team fights incredibly well with the Raiju. Has good anti-heal procs to deal with some of this RDO if he does like to go for something like the Divine Ruin. Again, you still have that matchup of Raijin and a Tiamat, which you can abuse inside of the early game, which is what I want to see, by the way. Panatom, you can leave solo lane alone. I trust the Yarkor on this Cerberus to be able to survive some ganks throughout the early. And if that's where we're going to see Layers put all of his attention, you can instead shift yours towards mid. Utilize this Thunderclap into a Tiamat at level 3 with an Osiris. With Mannequins, you're kind of going to shred pretty early on. So that's one way for the Leviathans to root their aggression. Sorry for this pause here. I'm interested in this Gilgamesh pick.
They're changing up the...
No
okay,
way. Okay.
Well, I mean, but this still, in light of Gilgamesh, like, kind of shifts things over. This means now Osiris solo, Serb support, Fenrir support, Osiris jungle, Serb solo? I mean, where's this Fenrir going?
I mean, it's a good amount of just flex potential all around the board, but you've been seeing Fenrir's been prioritized for the support role this entire playoffs. You saw Roar actually play at the Titan support, played a lot during the first and second round. So I expect the Fenrir to be going to support. Puts on a lot of pressure, a lot of dual lane kill potential. He pulls beads, which is what you wanted to see a little bit of. Maybe you can get it pulls it easier also than the Circuit, and you can kind of just play around your ult. It's a little bit safer. And then you'll probably see the Osiris jungle Serb solo just to match up against that RDO.
Aggressive Fenrir support. I mean, the Circuit last game didn't really get a chance to impact the game, because when you're playing assassin support and both your side lanes are behind and the enemy jungler is ahead, you're very limited. Oh, and also there's a Khepri on the other team, so you can't set up for individual picks like you're normally trying to do. In this game, pretty similar. This Khepri, I think, is really shutting down what Rongu wants to do with these types of selections. And if the Leviathans want to keep going with this style, they might need to spend a ban. We see that from Shinto in particular, maybe even from Panatom. Allowing Rongu to be aggressive, that's going to be big.
collapse around the red buff here. Blinks exchange, but it's Panatom who's pinned against the wall, and there's no escape. He'll get the stun, but Aurora will get the kill. In the Tartarus Titans, a team that is white hot, as I have called them, as far as winning sets, but first blood rate off the charts for these guys.
Pretty similar on those jumps in. Make sure you horrific him, and just kind of the anti-engage relic, and sort of in the way that Shell can be up against auto-attack-centric gods. Against non-auto attackers, horrific usually does that job a bit better.
And if Wrongyu's able to find grouped up targets, not unlike this, as the Ragnarok pulls Aurora right on back, but there's no engage on it. Instead, it's an engage on the Layers, but it's a great Scarab's Blessing. Wrongyu is right on the other end, but Layers will jump up and out, and he will be just fine. It's a rotation in from Yarkor to pull Aurora right back. Taiko drums are there, and Yarkor's the one who nets the kill now for the Leviathan. Some snipes head Shinto's way, but the Raijin stand strong.
Really nice play there from the Leviathans. I mean, they're just able to eventually get it all working together, but it was a little bit jarred and jumbled for a bit for them. As Panatom's got to be careful here. There's a lot of damage.
Cyclone Spin does a lot. Paul does a lot. Paul does not have a lot of mana, though. Benji rotates over, and Benji might regret that decision. Thunder Crash in, and bye-bye Benji. Tartarus Titans lose another, and the Leviathans have showed up in Game 2.
This is what we were expecting from the Leviathans, and it's centered around Wrongyu on this Fenrir.
Kind of a new lease on life, it almost feels like, for Zap as far as playing Hunter with this Leviathans team. Jump in from Wrongyu. Paul has beads, will use beads, and will jump away, but opening up a future opportunity in the middle lane of the Leviathans.
Feels pretty bad there. You have to use your beads and with your Khepri right next to you. I do wonder if he could have just waited it out, played nice and patient, and been able to be on the receiving end of that Scarab's Blessing, but better safe than sorry.
Red buff invade yet again for the Leviathans. This has been where the mindset is for the Levies here in game number 2. He did in one fight, and he said, like, what, 3,000 or something? I don't know.
Yeah, he had like 7,000
at the end of the game. Something ridiculous like that. You got to respect it. Aurora's got to respect the dive in from the Leviathans. Couple of stuns connect. Terrific Emblem gets used, but Aurora is able to scurry away, or whatever Khepri does, from the onslaught of the Leviathans. Opens up some space, though, for this Gold Fury to get started by the Leviathan. Cyclone Spin up into the air, looking for a steal, but gets reset by the Leviathans. No more damage. Rolls in. It's just going to be God damage for Cyclone Spin. Aurora being dove in the back line, and Scarab's Blessing will not get popped.
Gold will go the way of the Atlantis Leviathans.
That's well
so
played.
That ends up being perfect there for the Leviathans, and what a bounce back game it's been for them to get dominated the way they did. And
oh man, not a chance for Yarkor. You don't think here will delay his life, but Layers jumps in, drop kick against the wall, easy as you like, and now Benji able to even up that level lead.
He did have Rage 2, he had Short Sword, sold it for chin
Yeah,
size.
so I'm not crazy, right?
No, he
I'm
had
here
it.
sweating thinking I said the wrong thing.
No,
but,
he had it for sure. He definitely had Short Sword.
Big pivot.
Sold it for the chin size. Big bait there from Cyclone Spin. Cost him a bit of gold to do it, but he's down a full item right now to Zapman. The Leviathan should be stoked to take a fight at this point.
Oni Fury started up by the Titans, but it's slow, not fully committed on just yet. Yarkor stunned down, receives a big burst of damage, and he's locked in place. Look at Wrongyu in the back line, picked up Paul, but there's no damage connecting. Instead, Layers has gotten a kill on the perfect target. It's Zapman down first. It's Wrongyu down second. Cyclone Spin lets the arrows fly, and all of them hit onto Shinto.
And Shinto on the run. Benji still has his blink, and Aegis only delays the inevitable double kill for Paul.
Panatom's got to get something here, and unfortunately it might just be death that he finds on the other side. 4 down for the Leviathans. Titans come up huge 19 minutes in.
And I have no idea how the Leviathans got wiped that hard in a team fight where their carries had a full item over the enemy backline. Ends up, Shinto and Zap aren't close enough to peel for one another. The front line got too isolated. The Leviathans just fell apart in that team fight, in a team fight that they should have been favored to win by 4 or 5x. Like, that should have been a breeze for them. They should have paid the Titans to pull that Gold Fury for them.
My goodness, we are back to even, if you can even say that.
And they would have been in a great position.
They were doing what they could. They just didn't do it well.
They just didn't do it well. And it's credit to the Titans, man. Layers found a beautiful way in. We followed his perspective, so it was hard to see where else went wrong for the Leviathans. But Layers played it perfectly, target selected, and he just won his 1v1 up against the guy who should have been favored to win it.
Core, who has to pivot in that build. Tartarus Titans regroup as 5 around the mid lane tier 2. One snipe hit Shinto, the third does as well with the second missing. It's a Thunder Crash away from the Raijin. Layers it's low here as well. The Leviathan's putting out some good damage. The tier 2 crumbles, and a leap away from Panatom will keep himself out of harm's way, but the Titans now surging forward. If that root had connected, Yarkor would have been in trouble. But for now, they're able to back behind their Phoenix. Stygian Torment finds a couple, but he's immediately pulled back in, and Cyclone Spin gets the opening kill.
Run away for Rongyu, and Shinto's dying quick. Layers has 3 in a row, and Panatom can't get it done on the dive.
Will the crumble be completed? The Tartarus Titans turn around this game under a fury, and now they're barreling into the mid lane Phoenix. Mid lane Phoenix down. Rongyu and Zapman, a couple squishy members of the Leviathans left alone. They will not be able to defend their Titan, and the Tartarus Titans send us on to a game 3.
Cyclone doing the job, man. 3-0-4. I mean, only the front line takes a couple deaths in that game for the Titans. The rest of them pristine.
First pick God. These gods that the Titans are getting in the first phase on their side are just being more valuable. The Osiris isn't looking bad per se, but when you are first picking God, it needs to be one of the reasons you are either winning a game or contesting a game.
I'd say the Leviathans do okay in the early of this one. Like, they were controlling the pace very early on. I think it was about 2-1 at around the 6-minute mark. And from there, it felt like the Leviathans kind of had this, maybe this idea of, all right, we're doing good. Let's do even better. Let's push it. And they weren't exactly looking for the most opportunistic fights, and instead we're kind of forcing these engagements where really they aren't overly in an advantage state. It felt like to me that they were playing with a lead that they didn't have. They had a small one, and they were playing as if they were much further ahead, and the Tartarus Titans, this new revitalized squad, is going to punish you for plays like that, and that's exactly what happens this time around. And the second the Titans got control of the game, they never let go of it. And I agree. Panatom doesn't have a terrible performance on the Osiris, but if I'm first picking something, it can't be 0-2-2.
Not only that, only 5,000 damage that it was able to mass up there, so not even half about the amount that Shinto was able to put out. Not finding a whole ton. Layers, Paul, Cyclone Spin, all undying in this game.
Out of nowhere. Geb, Kepri, Alquang all kind of rear their head at that land phase as gods that don't really show up throughout the regular season, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, they can dominate a game. Right now, at playoffs, right here, it's Kepri, and someone's got to stop him.
Picks and bans for Game 3. Do or die moment for the Leviathans. And so I guess, you know, potentially we might need to get the broom ready. Reverse sweep's the only way this could happen, although I guess get the broom ready because it might just be a sweep for the Titans.
Nice.
Bans so far exactly the same as Game 1, and guess what? Same as Game 2, at least for the top 4. Artemis and Erlong Shin banned away by the Leviathans. The Titans banning away the Hell and the Emoja. Leviathans go back to this Odin ban, and Mifflin, you shook your head.
Look, man, it just better not be an Osiris, okay? That's all I'm going to say. We have not seen a single bit of value from this pick as of yet. I would argue that the Leviathans are legitimately utilizing their first pick as an additional ban. They're just, I don't want to play against Layers Osiris, so I guess we take it for ourselves. It feels like to me the Leviathans are playing the Titans game rather than their own.
Now, it was banned in every game of their set yesterday up against the Bolts. But we were talking about it earlier, Bobby, where we were looking at this Osiris. He's only won 2 games, and the 2 games he won, it was the Titans playing it.
Yeah, he's like 2-9 or something like that. He's just not getting the value, and it's not backed up with the picks. And this RDO pick is just so much safer. You have the flex potential into support, flex potential into solo. It also helps winning both those lanes, so it gives you a lane to also play around.
Yeah, I like this a lot, and I think it is probably going to be in the hands of Yarkor, who has had a lot of success on this pick in the past. He has said that, and I quote, maybe not the most fun god I've played, but really good at winning. So I'm hoping that that's the case here for the Leviathans going forward. The Titans, though, are in a position where they can get a very powerful top 2. Generally been Tiamat in this slot. Well, seems like the Titans may have been listening to the Death segment, or maybe they just realized how strong this Kepri has been. That is an early selection, and I don't like how it bodes for the Leviathans.
I mean, they've been scooping him up in the top 3, but it's always been that last pick just before those bans, so it hasn't been on the top of their mind. They just knew that maybe the Leviathans weren't going to pick it up, maybe feeling the threat and the pressure that would come with it. Hey, they're still going to get their third pick Tiamat here alongside that Kepri. I don't know, that feels like a really good top 2 to me.
Again, it feels like the Titans are getting more value on the second pick slide every single game. This Kepri Tiamat duo is just going to bring out so much pressure, so much kill potential, so much safety. Like, there's just so much stuff that the Titan boys are getting from these picks.
Look, it's very clear that the Leviathans have come into this set with a clear strategy. We're not playing against Artemis, we're not playing against the Erlang Shen, but clearly what we are doing is not working on the Leviathans. I wanted to see some broader sweeping adaptations, and now finally we're starting to see a little bit of that in the pick phase itself. Audio for Yarkor going to be great. Gilgamesh is a great facilitator if they can make it to that late game phase. Also acts as a bridge into the late game, as his early is incredibly strong, and we know what Terra is capable. I call this god, Aggro calls this god the god of press 4 in the late game, win the team fight by default. That's how good Earthern Fury is, and there are a lot of abilities already on the side of the Titans that are going to proc that heal no matter what. Ghastly Breath, dot damage. All right, we're getting that burst heal from the Earthern Fury. The same can be said of the Tornado from Tiamat, or even the second ability from Khepri. I like what we're seeing from the picks on the Leviathans, but I am concerned that they've just given the Titans too much.
Well, we're starting to see more adjustments, so they do still get Khepri, Tiamat, Cerberus there for the Titans. That feels really good. Their last pick each time for the Titans as well has been the jungle pick, so probably not going to be the next one, waiting until that very end to pick something up for layers. But Raijin gets banned, Morgan Le Fay gets banned by the Titans. The Leviathans change things up. They ban out the Osiris, which, again, 100% win rate for the Titans, and the Titans alone this weekend. But they also ban away this Rom, which Cyclone Spin has been very comfortable on 2 games in a row, and he takes the place of what was the Izanami ban in Game 1.
Yeah, I think Cyclone's just fine with either one of these 2 picks. He doesn't really care which one he gets. He just wants one of them for that lane clear, that just easy fight potential via pressure. And I think Cyclone is just fine with it. But I do like the Osiris ban. Get it off of Lairs. You don't want Panatom to be playing it. You don't want Lairs to be playing it. Make Lairs go to maybe that Camazotz again or something else.
Leviathans got themselves a draft that, for the first time, maybe this set screams to me Leviathans. What is more synonymous with the Leviathans than Shinto on Merlin, right? This is going to be a good look for them going forward, but as you highlighted, this Izanami is not a pick that Cyclone Spin's like, oh man, I got to play Iza. It's like, oh boy, I'm going to have automatic pressure inside of my lane. Khepri also has incredibly good wave clear as well with his second ability. I don't think there's any opportunity for the Leviathans to root their aggression through the long lane, and it seems like they agree going towards the Hachiman with their last pick. That is a very safe pick. Maybe not as safe as something like the Heimdall, but certainly at least in that top 3 as far as safety is concerned. CC immunity to the ultimate, the ability to just leave a fight if you so choose. I'm concerned though, man. The Leviathans are going to have a very hard time getting their feet beneath them, especially with Layers now on the Camazotz. We saw what he did in the early a while back.
If anyone's going to do it.
I'm not counting my chickens. You know, they have not hatched quite yet. Certainly a possibility for the Leviathans to come back in this one, but they're going to need to really step it up in the team fighting phase, because they have not been very impressive in those moments in this set. They have not. I haven't liked their drafts as much up against this Khepri, and what Bobby said is exactly what I was going to hit on. A complete different look for them in the face of this Khepri, much more oriented around the team fight, much more centered around AoE.
Yep. We're
not focusing one target, we're focusing the entire team.
It's duo.
Really, really love it, because it just guarantees you pressure in this lane. This is an unpressurable lane between Khepri and Izanami, 2 gods who really bring it when it comes to wave clear and even kill potential in the lane. And the Leviathans, they don't have a winning lane over here. It's a pretty gankable lane on the right-hand side. Can we maybe punish them for that? Merlin, not necessarily going to beat your head in with pressure in the early stages, even against someone like Tiamat. I think the Titans have drafted very well in this game, and it's got to be centered around the duo lane first and foremost. That's where the pressure is most held.
Leviathans build up a little pressure here on right, and it's Yarkor that's got Benji a little bit low and pushed beneath the tier 1 tower, and Panatom will be here for a blue buff invade as well. Gets dropped down by the Leviathans. Are you going to get a kill onto Benji as well? The chase down is there. Panatom strikes for first blood, but Panatom could go down in return.
Healing?
Does Layers have the range? No, he doesn't, and Panatom with 15 HP lives on.
And that's exactly what the Leviathans needed. That's the first aggressive buff invade we've seen from them, at least on the right side of the map composition, outside of damage. But there's a lot of CC elsewhere in the comp here for the Titans. Khepri brings a lot, Cerberus, of course. and a little bit of CC there from Paul and from Cyclone Spin. So I don't think that they're too far down.
Benji is not level 5 yet, and you have to imagine not much of a chance to live from this one. Jumps exchange and Winds of Shamash is the execute tool for Panatom. Bat Out of Hell will get Panatom low, but yet again, the Gilgamesh will survive, and yet again, the Leviathans put pressure on right.
Very similar. Layers has got to be careful here. If that cripple field was up, and that's a quick switch stance, stun into bear swipe, that would have been another kill for Yarkor.
To read for the Titans, you've mentioned how it's quicker for them and maybe more obvious for the Titans to respond to Panatom going over there to right. And so maybe we start to see that pressure placed elsewhere, though. Blue buff is spawning, and Panatom in behind with Layers and Benji on the right side of the map as well. It's an early engage onto Yarkor, just shy of a tower shot finding its way in there. Yarkor's half HP, though, so this far from a foregone conclusion.
Good stun onto Yarkor. Layers looking for him. The healing not quite there yet, and the Titans finally on the board.
Oh, and there's a chase on the back end as well. Panatom will leap away. Layers is low. Will Ranyu turn around for more damage? No, you don't have it if you're this Terra, especially not when this is what's in the rear view mirror, and it's the Titans surging forward. Walls go up, walls come together. Double stun, but Layers was not a part of it, and the Titans find 2 quick kills.
And a great collapse coming from the Chaos side. Just able to really read the play of the Leviathans, and that's Benji and Layers combining to put some pressure on that RDO before the rest of the team gets there. They get Yarkor down to half HP.
But it looks like everyone's just going to go back to their own separate sides. Pyro was pulled a second ago, but ends up getting dropped. And so that's a win for the Leviathans to find some momentum here in game number 3. Ranyu could be caught out here. Roar dashes forward, but Ranyu, ever so patient, will let those walls crash on together. So Shinto able to help out around that Gold Fury. Can he help out in a team fight that could be brewing here as a stun from Yarkor finds itself onto a couple members of the Titans with Pyromancer in the background? This is so risky. You don't want to lose a massive fight over what is just the Pyromancer, but if you can get it, you'd be feeling pretty good, and that's why maybe the Titans a little bit slower, but one stun is all the Leviathans need to engage onto Aurora, who's dashed away. Yarkor doing his best to chase down the Titan support, but look at the damage that Layers and the rest of the Titans have put into the front line of the Leviathan. Scarab's Blessing comes out from Aurora, ends up not being needed, but Panatom left alone, and Layers has the last bit of damage.
And the Titans just continue to be impossible to dive. They are splitting up so well, and then coalescing back together whenever the fight is better for them. Love the way they played that engagement. That was a 5v4 in favor of the Leviathan. Cyclone Spin still isn't here.
Pyromancer gets reset here. Shinto will do the last bit of damage, so at least the Pyromancer goes to the Leviathans. But you drop a kill in the meantime. And so maybe the Titans could have done a little bit more with that individual pick onto Panatom. That's so awkward.
Does he finish it? Does he start his next item? And then if he starts his next item, can Cyclone finish Rage, start a fight, and all of a sudden his Rage is doing a lot, whereas it won't the next fight? I don't know.
Watch out, Zapman, who will dash away. Cyclone Spin, use Dark Portal, finishes off the tower, and on the horse goes Zapman, but Bat Out of Hell will close this gap. Aegis buys time, but time's all Zapman's got. Layers on a killing spree, and the Leviathan's Hunter is down.
Now, Roar's in a bad spot now, but look at how tanky he is. I mean, he went Bulwark. Second item, not respecting the damage from Panatom whatsoever because it's this double Guardian and a Mage.
Panatom back in will try to leap away, but the Titans in force around this red buff. Can Yarkor make the difference? Everyone from the Titans just ignoring him, and Cyclone Spin has turned his eyes to the jungler, and he'll strike well. Paul has to back off. He's down to half HP here as well. Shinto doing a lot of damage at full HP, and the Titans will get 2, and they'll get him clean.
And it's just the same story for the Leviathans. They just keep getting caught in these awkward scenarios where they don't feel like they're being the initiators anymore.
Or really, if you count Aurora, who's 2 levels up over Ranyu. There is still ground to expand there. If you're the Tartarus Titans, we're not even 20 minutes into the game, and Cyclone Spin is already level 20. So Fire Giant has to be something that gets looked at, especially with the chin size, and now Silver Branch for Cyclone.
Still sitting on his hidden dagger,
Still sitting on the hidden dagger. These next few minutes, you have to imagine, is where this Titans team can maybe seal up a championship here in Phase 2.
And the Leviathans, I mean, they're built around these team fights, but they're too far behind. Rangyu's caught again.
Rangyu's just getting burned down here, and it's Layers and Benji just autoing him to death. Finally, there's some help. But did the help arrive in time? Yes is the answer, and Ranyu lives on, has Layers overextended. Zapman would sure like to say so. watch out. Cyclone Spin around the backside can make a big difference here in this fight. Aurora gets taken low on the front, but abducts Yarkor right back into the awaiting arms of this Izanami, and Cyclone Spin puts him down. Panatom finally able to get the kill onto Layers. The health bar's low. This is an opportunity for the Leviathans to strike, but Cyclone Spin is on the map, and you can't count your chickens. Luckily, Jinto ends up getting one.
Finally, the Leviathans showing some signs of life here 20 minutes in. Able to get some kills, split up the Titans effectively that time around, and Shinto under zero pressure that entire engagement. Able to really make them pay. Those quicker cooldowns than someone like Raijin might have at this point in their build, able to make the difference.
Become a Breastplate of Valor, now is back to where it was a second ago. Cyclone Spin has sold off the Rage. These mind games are just kind of fun to follow along with. Zapman has to gallop away. A solo kill at this point in the game would be absurdly detrimental. And I think Zapman
He's
is
going to be close.
okay. It's close,
Whoa.
but back to the fountain he goes. The beads, though, aggro,
Yep.
that's a tough loss for the backline.
And the ultimate at the same time. You know, in a situation like this, maybe his ultimate could force the Titans in and chase them down, set them up for Panatom, but without that mounted archery, going to be difficult to do so. And it's a pretty long cooldown on those beads, 2 minutes, so not until 24:10 for those beads to come back up. And immediately the Titans group up. They know that they've got a power play over here on this left side.
Here's what I really want. I want Cyclone Spin, now that he sold the Tier 1 Rage, to go back into the Rage after Yarkor has committed to the Breastplate of Valor. We'll see if this game goes that long. The Titans won't want that to be the case, so the gold very close. The Leviathan's in a position where they can swing back. Panatom gets nothing because Paul has used the beads. It's a jump away. Wrongyu walks on in with the rest of his team here. The Tartarus Titans playing this one slow. Plenty of damage from the Leviathans here, aggro. That 1,500 gold lead. Not big at all 22 minutes in that build potentially. And Yarkor too far on to build Spectral unless the Fighter's Mask or something like that ends up turning into it later on into the build. Again, it's the Titans who have this map pressure, but the gold lead is far from out of control, and this is certainly an aggressive call from the Leviathans. The Fire Giant has been started. Yarkor has been left alone. The bear rumbling away from the front line of the Tartarus Titans. Yarkor is low. Panatom is low. And that is an aggressive call that does burn 3 ults out of the Titans.
And I don't hate that call from the Leviathans, but they've got to be quicker to disengage. They thought that the Titans would be on Gold Fury, but they were not.
There's an ult advantage for the Leviathans. Can the Leviathans turn that into a game advantage is the next big question. The Titans have picked up where the Leviathans left off, and it's right on the FG.
Getting low already.
Wrongyu walking in. Zapman gallops. Fire Giant taking on the Leviathans. The Titans now need to win the fight on the back end of things. Frenzy used as Panatom jumps in, and it's Cyclone Spin who gets deleted by the Leviathan's jungler.
Yarkor right in the thick of it, but big damage coming from Paul. He's still plenty healthy.
Support fight on the left ends with Layers getting the kill. The Titans have 2. They've lost Cyclone Spin, though, with the rest of this fight. It's a leap away from Panatom. Benji finds a stun onto Zapman. The collapse in from the Titans might be here, but Zap lives on. Goodbye, Benji. Zapman comes up big. A stun on the Layers as well. The Leviathans have turned around game 3.
What patience from the Leviathans, man. What a play to just pull the Titans in and allow their AoE to really dictate the pace of that fight. Zapman plays that fight so well. His relic usage was solid. The way that he baited Benji in was perfect. And now Yarkor in trouble, but it's just Paul here. Shinto can flicker in, but Paul still has his leap away, so he's okay.
Leaps away.
I don't think he's going to be in any trouble, except
Panatom.
maybe he's on the way.
Panatom is close by. Paul has both of his actives here. This would be a massive loss. 3 men under the Tier 2 tower. Beads get used. Yarkor jumps in alongside Panatom. Paul separating out this fight. Is he going to live? He'll do you one better. He'll get a kill. Shinto finally puts him down, but Cyclone's gotten a kill here as well. That is a risky dive. That's cost you 2 of your FG buffs.
Hate that call from the Leviathans. You got to just take the win when you get it. Their eyes get a little bit too big for their stomachs, and they decide that they need to take Paul off the map. Finally, they do. But as you said, Dave, it cost them 2 of their fire advantage around this Gold Fury as well.
Let's see what happens here around this FG. Yarkor turns his eyes to the Fire Giant aggro, and it's just the last bit of damage there. I don't think that's a view moments before disaster, but it's definitely an interesting call for the Leviathans to then, after winning a big fight, you are in control of this game. We're tower diving Paul. However, if that works, now you've got a massive advantage without this Tiamat on the map.
Sure, but I actually don't even know if that's the case, Dave, because they would have had to back and buy anyways.
I mean, you are about as even as you could get here, Aggro, you might think, outside of a couple levels in support.
Exactly. Very, very even at this point in the game. And with that last team fight, the first time Aurora has made a mistake on this Khepri in this set, he ulted the wrong person. It was Cyclone, I think, who got chunked down, but the Scarab's Blessing went on top of someone who was right next to Cyclone instead. And that's where you're starting to see why this style of composition is much more successful up against a Khepri.
Zapman has showed up big around that Fire Giant fight. Much less veiled is the crit build on this Hachiman. Pyromancer goes down, and it's Phantom left alone with a couple members of the Titans here. Fire Giant has not spawned, but the buff has fallen off. Aurora gets stunned, and here's the chase from the Leviathan. Scarab's Blessing will only buy Aurora some time, and Zapman crits him on down. The Leviathans have found an early pick. Layers has to swoop away.
And this is where you're seeing how this fight cannot be started very well by the Tartarus Titans. Titans leave it up to Zapman to get his back off, and that's all fine and dandy. But the Titans are having trouble starting these fights properly. They've been playing counter-engage a lot and really allowing Layers to be the engage in Game 2 on that Gilgamesh. On Camazotz, he can't really do that. And I think that is starting to really make a difference here.
We're 9 seconds from an enhanced Fire Giant. Might not get there if the Leviathans do a quick enough frenzy. Gets used to jump in from Pentatom. Layers gets deleted. Cyclone Spin is an afterthought. Zapman has gotten one as well. And now the rest of the Leviathans chasing on in. It's Paul, Benji, and Aurora. The last 3 alive. The Leviathans turn back to the FG.
Perfect. I mean, I was surprised that the Leviathans dropped, but their engage was flawless. They used that frenzy well, but now they're back to an EFG that's going to be harder to burn. Can they zone Paul and Aurora away properly?
Paul has both of his actives, but does not have the space to get into the Fire Giant pit. Paul has done a lot of damage to Yarkor. Paul lets a volley of damage fly. Wrong U drops his ultimate down around the enhanced Fire Giant that continues to get burnt by the Leviathan. Zapman walks forward alongside Yarkor. The Leviathans get the enhanced Fire Giant. Is it going to cost Zapman his life? The answer is no, but it might cost Paul his. Yarkor is right in range on the other end of the leap. Scarab's Blessing, but it's a 3-man stun from Yarkor, and the Leviathans continue to chase in.
Shinto finds Aurora, blink in from Yarkor, finds Paul again, and wins of Shamash there. Paul will fall.
Shinto's got the double. Cyclone Spin back up in base here. It's a juggling of online players now for the Tartarus Titans. A nice silence comes on out. That's Dark Portal from Cyclone Spin, if nothing else. Delays the base siege, and the Leviathans have to take a deep breath, and it looks like the Titans get one more chance at a 5v5.
All those towers you were talking about earlier, Dave, come back to matter quite a bit in that moment. A lot of times the Leviathans might be able to end off killing 2. As it stands, they have to at least get one more Phoenix.
You're at least going to get mid lane here. Frenzy gets used, and the Leviathans barrel on into the mid lane. A stun from Benji is onto Yarkor, but Yarkor alone. So now you got Tier 1 and Tier 2 on left.
To help each other without getting punished.
Now, while this game seems to be winding down for the Leviathans, not without some intrigue, the Titans back to a 5v5. They've got Tiamat minions to buy space.
And relics for the most part.
This set, far from over, even if the Leviathans were able to win this one, but this is the first we've seen the names Shinto, Panatom, Yarkor, everyone from the Leviathans show up, and those are some of the best names in the league. And this is what we expected to see from the Leviathans, a turnaround performance that have gotten them very much back in the game. And if they have it their way, back in the set. Benji has engaged on one, has pulled Wrong U back into the fray. Look at Layers trying to engage, but immediately gets pushed back. Cyclone Spin ate a whole lot of damage. Titan under attack by the fire minions. The Leviathans have found a second lease on life. Benji needs one to keep himself in the game, and Aurora is giving it to him.
But that might not be enough still, Dave. 3 waves of fire minions barreling in. Worth noting, though, the Titans do have good wave clear. They'll need it.
Paul sends some damage Wrong U's way. Yarkor gets stunned here. All 5 of the Titans grouped up together. 30 seconds left on the enhanced Fire Giant buff. Shinto's got both active. Zapman's got his Aegis. Beads there for Panatom, and that's it.
Double fire wave coming into the base, and the Titans can't let that go for free. The Titans pretty squishy right now. I think that might put it to very, very low.
The Titan is going to be damaged. The Titans have to win this fight or the game is over, but a horrible way to start it. Scarab's Blessing is already gone, and it won't matter. Aurora can send a stun out one way. Panatom jumps into the back, but he has not gotten the kill that he came for. Aurora does have to leave, so it's a 4v5, but the Leviathans also taking a lot of damage here as well. Shinto's on a killing spree. The Merlin is struck first.
And now all the Leviathans need to do is secure this enhanced Fire Giant. That's all. Don't go for the end. There's still 4 members up, and a lot of them still have their relics. Play it slow, and they make the right decision. Don't let the moment get the better of them. They secure the big objective. The Bracer of Radiance is coming up from Rongyu. We can just get these 2 Phoenixes, and then we can head in, place the Bracer, and send us to game 4.
Benji has had a brutal game here, 1, 5, and 6. The Cerberus has not been able to jump in effectively. Plenty of assists, sure, but has died more often than not in the meantime. Aurora hoping the Scarab's Blessing comes back up for one last-ditch effort. Cyclone Spin's got to go big here. We've seen the Izanami put on a big performance in Game 3. Is it going to be big enough to keep the Titans in Game 3? Enough to steal away a win here from the Leviathans. Not if the Leviathans have anything to say about it. They walk on into the base as Paul gets drop-kicked against the wall. Lots of damage in, but not enough to get the Tiamat.
The Winds of Shamash aren't enough. Layer is still chasing the backline. Shinto low, and he got him, but it cost him.
But Yarkor immediately trades back on the kill. This is a 4 versus 4. Enhanced Fire Giant plus minions for the Leviathans. Paul sends some damage Rongyu's way. Benji with the Stygian Torment gets nothing. Panatom abducted right back into the awaiting arms.
What a drop kick!
Though. The health bar gone from Paul, who has to leap back underneath the Titan. And the rest of the Leviathans starting to pour into the base. Big crits out from Zapman. The Leviathans keeping themselves alive in this best of 5 sets.
Oh my!
No, he's got the kill on the Panatom. Yarkor ends up getting the kill back onto the Izanami.
They can't end yet. Zap's still up though. He's the one to watch as Paul gets rooted and Zapman putting out the damage. Paul still alive.
Zapman has to take as Paul gets stunned on into the back. The Leviathans
No
haven't done the
way.
damage yet. Zapman keeps himself in and Titan crumbles. The Leviathans alive on to Game 4.
So close to an insane defense by the Tartarus Titans.
Hear that game.
I mean, yes, they look better gameplay-wise, but I think their comp just made so much more sense when you factor in what the Titans have been picking. They picked that Khepri that just saves the one character, and the Assassin support just doesn't work against that. That's one of the best picks against the Assassin supports are the Gebs, the Khepris who can just save that one person that's getting gone on.
I would argue this is the first game this set that the Leviathans played. I don't know what team we saw for the first 2 games, but it wasn't the Leviathans. They weren't playing their style. They weren't even necessarily playing their own picks. This is the first time we saw a composition where I thought to myself, yeah, this is something the Leviathans would like, and they played their style. To be sure, it was not a clean win. Took a Fire Giant steal into teamfight win off a tail end of that to find actually decent footing inside of this one, but it really was a much better look at this team as a unit. The team fighting was a lot better. It's felt like they had a solid game plan going forward. I think it was you, Bobby, in the green room that had essentially said, before now, it felt like the Leviathans were just playing the game, and now they're thinking about it. And I think that reflects in the standings, in the win-loss here, finally finding one up against the Titans.
And they had mentioned it on the cast, but Zapman has been a part of the most reverse sweeps that we have gotten to see in Smite history. So if anyone's going to be able to do it, well, it's going to be him, and it's going to have to start now the way they just did. 47,000 damage still from Paul, despite a loss in that Tiamat. And that's the first loss that she's had today, at least. Every other game that Paul's been able to pick that up, it's looked phenomenal for them. We're just phenomenal picks each time.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused by this, because I think for the most part, even though the Leviathans may have outdrafted a little bit, I think their comp was still really good, and they played the comp near perfectly. So I'm surprised that they didn't do this, and I wonder what they are going to be banning now to maybe get first pick value here.
Yeah, I think bans are going to see a large shift up now that the Titans find themselves in the first pick position. I'm not sure either what they're going to prioritize pretty high up, but maybe we see just the Khepri in that first pick selection, and that kind of maintains the exact same stratagem that we saw when they were in the second pick slot, because the Leviathans will likely take, if I had to guess, Tiamat plus one other thing. The Titans are in a position where they do have a 1-game buffer here, so they don't have to worry too much about this one. Artio, Khepri removed. I see you go down in your head about that one, Bobby, and I agree, man. This Khepri has been a major issue for the Leviathans, and now in the second pick position, maybe feeling like they have a little bit more room to play with.
I mean, you had even mentioned it while we were watching that last game, like the pivot point where the Titans stopped winning was one bad ult from Aurora, and that won the fight for the Leviathans. There was a point where they stole a Fire Giant, but from that point forward, Khepri just didn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, Khepri gets to that point kind of when it's super, super late, where ulting somebody just gets very hard. He barely missed the ult on, I don't remember who was very low, and he ulted the person right next to them, and it threw off the fight very badly because they rely on that Khepri getting the revive or being able to keep that person alive for that extra time. And Aurora had played a near perfect first 2 games and perfect up until that point, and you saw how hard it was for the Leviathans to even take some fights.
Well, this is where things get interesting. Artio and Khepri, Mifflin had mentioned earlier, were the first 2 bans. Titans go for Terra. The Leviathans go back to the Odin. That leaves open your Erlang Shin, your Artemis, Heimdall, Hel, Yamoja.
Oh, no.
Tiamat. I mean, all of these picks that we've seen, Gilgamesh, like, I can keep going. There's a lot of good gods available. And they do take out the Yamoja. What do the Leviathans try to juggle here?
I think the thing right now is there's 2 very, very strong gods that have dictated games so far, and it's Artemis and Hel. And I assume they're going to look for a trade, but now it's up to the Titans to see what they value more. The Artemis that Cyclone absolutely popped off with yesterday, or the Hel, which Shinto has shown he hard carries games with. And I think they will go towards the Hel because Zap has not really performed as well as Cyclone has on that Artemis, so I think it's a trade they're willing to take. But let's see what they do.
I think the Titans take the Artemis, man. Maybe we could throw up another little bet here, Bobby. Just kidding. I can't lose any more money. Well, they have to go towards the Artemis. Take that action right now. Artemis, I bet the Titans take it.
Yeah, they're 100% going to take the Artemis. It's just the best pick out.
Mifflin is trying to recoup some of that money. Yamoja, and hey, guess what? It was the Hel that were banned out right there. Erlang Shin as well, available for the first time this set. Heimdall, available for the first time this set. Artemis, available for the first time this set. Mifflin, I'm going to piggyback on what you had said. The Titans know that Zapman isn't necessarily... Or no, you had said that. Zapman
can I take that bet about the Artemis?
Oh, no, it's too late, man.
They're going to take Erlang.
Yeah, Erlang Shen locked in. Layers has not been allowed to play this pick as of yet, but now finally gets that early game aggression.
But it had been mentioned that Zapman's Artemis isn't as good as some of his others, specifically compared to Cyclone's
Bobby
Artemis.
said that, not me.
Yeah, so Bobby takes the credit for that one. And Zapman likes to play Heimdall, like, and it's available for him. I don't know that they scoop it up here.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is just a brilliant play by the Titans, because picking up that Erlang now gives them that 2v2 pressure, which we have been talking about. The thing so far is in this set, they haven't been drafting for that 2v2 because Hel's been gone, so they've kind of just been picking the Tias and stuff. Picking that Erlang guarantees almost all 2v2s are going to be one for the Titans, and the Kabrak and Artemis pick is very good, because if you just go Artemis, one of her worst matchups is that Kabrakan. He is root immune, he can just run at her and cage her off, and she cannot get away, and she's forced to fight into them.
There are a couple other notable counter matchups that have similar facets. Ymir is still available, and the Titans could go there if they want to be able to wall off the Artemis. It is a little bit immobile, so the Tusky, if she does hit level 5 first, can start to shut her down, but that wall is so strong inside of the team fight, not just strong against Artemis, but also against Kabrakan. He's got a very telegraphed engage, pops the one, starts walking directly at you like an NPC. Maybe I just drop a wall, stop that from happening. But Bobby, I want to hear a little bit more about this. Why don't you think this Artemis is good?
I mean, I think the Artemis is fine. I just wanted to specify that Cyclone's Artemis was hard carrying games yesterday. And we have not seen that from Zap. But I do think taking away the Artemis with the Zap, and because you know Cyclone isn't going to be playing that Heimdall. He hasn't shown that want to play it. It's the Rama, the Artemis, and the Izanami, and he goes towards the Rama over the Izanami.
Yeah, ROM selection is interesting. If you go up into the air, you're landing into a trap. And if you go up in the air and sit up there for a while, you might be landing into a trap and then having another trap dropped on you. You can get locked down for a very long time inside of this matchup. If Cyclone Spin falls behind against Zapman, Zapman is going to dominate this lane. That is how strong this matchup is for Artemis from ahead. Kind of similar to Danzaburo. Start winning, win way harder.
A lot of wild shakeups. I mean, admittedly, the Rama Tiamat is not too different for the Titans, right? I mean, they ran that earlier today, so it's not too outlandish. Erlang Shin maybe helps pivot things. Although you had mentioned the mid 2v2, and Erlang helps pick that up. But with Tiamat beside him, Tiamat's not like the most early game scrap heavy. Is that like still slowed down, or is Layers enough?
I mean, it's kind of just up to the Leviathans pick right here. They could pick for the 2v2 and go like a Raw or something. I obviously don't expect the Raw, but they still can pick to win that 2v2 just because Tiamat's 2v2 is pretty weak. It's really up to the Leviathans here. How much are they prioritizing that 2v2? How much do they want to win that, or are they fine just kind of giving it up to the Erlang and just playing for that later game style?
I would argue that Erlang Shen and Tiamat together is actually pretty strong in the 2v2. Sure, Tiamat not that strong in her own right, but you're following up off of a pin, off of a knock-up from the turtle form. All you need from your Tiamat is a little bit of damage, and Erlang Shen builds enough time that you can charge up that first ability, and a follow-up stun from there I think that should be just enough. This is a very threatening 2v2 for the Titans already. I think the Leviathans might have to emphasize a little bit of safety for their mid laner.
Well, checking in on the bans here in Phase 2, Xing Qin, as well as the Cerberus, taken out by the Leviathans. Gilgamesh and Serket banned away by the Titans. And last game, so Game 1, Leviathans first pick Osiris, they lose.
No.
Game 2, Leviathans first pick Osiris, they lose. Game 3, Leviathans ban Osiris, they win. Game 4, they go right back to this Osiris.
I hope they give it to Yarkor, man. That's all I'm going to say.
They got the Kabrakan. He's been playing
Kabrakan
that.
can jungle. Panatom, I'm not sure, has played it in the past maybe once. My memory is not serving me so well here, but Kabrakan jungle is easy to execute on, and we've seen how the Osiris has panned out for Panatom so far. Has not impressed me inside of these playoff finals. I'm certain that he can perform on the Kabrakan, and I know for a fact, because I've been on the receiving end of it, Yarkor's got a nasty Osiris.
I feel like Yarkor has a nasty everything, though. I don't know
Every
if that's
role.
like I don't know if you really said anything unique there. Like Yarkor just seems to be really good at Smite. They lock in a Fafnir. We haven't seen a whole lot of him this weekend. I mean, a couple of times yesterday, but he's been losing a few bit. I mean, he has been and was at one point one of the most picked supports. And now they get a Hercules as well, Bobby. They're rounding things out with a nice, interesting draft for us.
I think this Titans comp is like got everything they need. They have good dive, good pressure in most lanes. They have safety measures for the late game, objective damage. This Titans comp has really no weaknesses. And then you look at the Leviathans comp, and it just seems like a bunch of just strong gods kind of just thrown together. Like the Osiris, like we've said, has not performed that well. It doesn't look great. Maybe the Khepri was a big problem with that. The Khepri doesn't allow the Osiris to play as aggressively, but I don't know. This Titans comp is shaping up really well.
Oh, hovering the Merlin for their last pick was really solid for Shinto. And this is a pick that, admittedly, it's not one that I'm like, oh my god, he's going to carry the game, and oh my god, it's a detriment. Like, it's Shinto. He's playing a mage. He's going to do really well with it. They lock it in. Mifflin, how are you feeling about the Leviathans draft?
The Leviathans have a high execution composition, man. This Fenrir is going to be hard to perform on.
That instead of the hell. Now, that doesn't mean that Paul isn't going to absolutely style on him with this Tiamat, because the chances are he probably still will. But I think that you've got to pick your poison, and some days you gotta just beat the players playing some of their best picks. And that's one of those.
You know, maybe it's like, the name of the movie's escaping me, but there's the guy who's like drank enough a little bit of poison all his life that like he has a natural immunity built up. The Leviathans have played against this Tiamat so much this set that they're now immune to Paul's Tiamat poison. Maybe is what we're looking at here. They've at least figured out how to play against it a little bit as far as not losing the game. Avoiding 40,000 damage is a whole nother conversation that we'll have to revisit as this game goes on. Shinto looked great on the Merlin, and I think that's a great start here. Rongyu back on the Fenrir, though. This time aggro not against the Khepri, and I think that's a big difference.
Big difference. Banning that away.
Impacting the game?
Yeah, somewhat similar. I mean, Osiris less about outright CC and more about his utility in these team fights. That damage reduction so big, usually a lot harder to kill than someone like an Erlong Shen, but Erlong brings that burst of CC.
Skirmish in, and it's Layers, who is abducted right back into Zatman, who drops the board, but then it's a double stun. On the other side, Rongyu's gotten first blood, Cyclone Spin left in the back line, up into the sky he goes, but immediately cancels it out. Panatom does not have a lot of mana. Rongyu doesn't either. Cyclone Spin uses the beads, and that'll keep him alive, but now Paul's rotated in from mid, and Aurora is there on the answer back.
But Shinto's arrived as well, burning Paul away, and Panatom gets it, and now Aurora's run out of power at the wrong time. Zap suppresses him over the wall.
From downtown, the Artemis swings. The Leviathans come up big, 3-1 on the left side of the map, and it's 102 already for the Artemis. 102 already for the jungler. The Leviathans off to a great start. Of rotating over that end up just grabbing that one assist. So.
Right.
Again, not a massive swing as far as starting off this game and putting Zapman far and away ahead or putting Panatom far and away ahead. But it's those small differences in moments like this that could make a difference. Look at the damage that Tusky has done to Cyclone Spin. 1 good, 2, 3, no good. But Rongyu has kept up the chase on the Cyclone Spin. The last bit of damage hasn't connected. Zapman will end up getting the kill, gifted over. Aurora has rotated into the back end of this fight, but Panatom has as well. Beads used by the Fafnir. Rongyu blinks forward, brutalized, sets up Panatom, and the Leviathan sniffing game 5.
Just not enough ward coverage for the Titans to go for an aggressive play like that. A roll in from Cyclone. He has to know that he's going to eat a board to the nose right away.
The map where you've got this big lead for Zapman.
Panatom in onto Paul and puts out some good damage. But Rongu is really just looking for Layers right now, and he needs to because Layers has now gotten to level 10 without suffering an additional death.
I think Layers needs beads at 12.
Yeah, absolutely. Against Artemis Fenrir, are you kidding me?
Well, Rongu is got 2 levels till we get there. He's walked on in, he's found Layers, delivered him to the doorstep. It's a taunt back in though. As a 9 turns blessing comes on out, there will be a heal here for Layers, but doesn't do much. Benji's let the excavate roll on through the jungle. As Panatom is oh, it's massive from Benji! Are you kidding me? The Tartarus Titan solo laner comes up big. Shinto though is able to turn it on around, and it's all for naught. Benji helps with one, but the Leviathan turn around another. Zapman on his rotation and could get something done.
Oh, too little, too late. But Aurora's detransformed, has the jump.
That is
but Yarkor
criminal.
might be able. No, great hammer. Criminal is right, Dave. How often
Devastating.
do you see a 2-man Earthbreaker into a 3-man driving strike, and you get 1 kill for it? You only get 1. Now, it still trades you 1 for 1. It keeps Layers actually ahead of Panatom as it's Pyromancer again!
Benji with the double pullback in. The Leviathans take down the Pyro. But now it's Yarkor who stunned Benji from behind. Shinto flickers forward, misses the last bit of damage, but Benji falls down nonetheless to Yarkor, but it's a full health, full mana Tiamat that's now rotating behind the Leviathans.
Oh, you can tell Paul's itching to jump in, but just hasn't done it quite yet. Disciplined from Paul, no relics for him.
That's how that ends for Benji?
Yep.
Are you kidding me?
He gets killed.
That is unfair.
Yep, my man hits what, like 4 people and 2 Earthbreakers?
Sorry, Benji, we're going to look at it again, I think.
Heartbreaking. This is an unbelievable play, and I like the option from him here to try and just make sure that Panatom gets hit by this boulder, but really good attention to detail from Panatom. That is nasty. And then this crazy that Rongu and Yarkor live from that. That is nuts.
And that's a big wall from Yarkor that ended up turning around the back end of that fight. My heart goes out to Benji in that moment. You set up a fight like that, you're for sure that your team is running away with it. And then it's the fallout after that where the Leviathans even further their advantage. They get Pyro, they add another kill onto Benji himself. And so ends up not feeling great for the Tartarus Titans. Doesn't feel great for Paul either, who had to use his beads 45 or so seconds ago. Won't have him here for this fight. And the Chain CC connects, but the Aegis is still available. This is not an easy one for the Leviathan. Shinto, from range, deals the last bit of damage, and a well-executed dive goes to the Leviathans.
And you put Paul's Aegis on cooldown at the same time, so that's a huge play. And Rongu, I mean, look at how much easier this is with Fafnir there instead of a Khepri. That Khepri, that play doesn't happen if Khepri's right there. Paul just lives. He's stabilized now for the Tartarus Titans, and their team fight is scary come late game. You've got a lot going for you if you're the Titans.
We're farming damage, baby. Most supports don't get the opportunity to do this all that often. It's, yeah, when's a Hunter going to come in and ruin things? Rongu actually might pay for his troubles now. He'll walk away. Paul is close by, though. Gold Fury restarted by the Titans. Zapman has his ultimate, has both actives. The Leviathan's trying to call the Titans on their Gold Fury pull. Zapman continues up the DPS, but it's been dropped by both teams. Rongu had to use his ultimate. Big loss for the Leviathans.
And Layers had to use his beads, so Zapman's ultimate all of a sudden a lot more threatening, and that's why the Leviathan's right back towards the Fury.
Cyclone Spin is here as well. Rongu takes a whole lot of damage from Cyclone. Yarkor around the back desperately
got Layers
for a stun. You've got Layers trapped in. Shinto on a killing spree. The Leviathans have opened this one up with a kill. Will the snipes be impactful?
No.
A little bit of help, but that's about it here from Cyclone Spin. Aurora, Waltz is on away. Or Yarkor rather, Waltz is on away, has to use the beads. The Titans right back though on this Gold Fury.
And no ults to speak of on the Leviathans except for Panatom. Paul doing zoning duty, but Gold Fury getting low, and you know the Leviathans are stealing that away. Cannot coin flip in front of them. Too comfortable on stealing it away.
54 damage.
Yeah, that's just a tick of the eclipse there from Shinto.
Desperately to hit that stun and just unable to do so.
That's called walrus hands. That's what we call that.
Yeah?
He's flopping around like a big old walrus.
That tracks. I'm with it. All right, walrus hands it is from this point on. Zapman, a chance for a kill onto Layers, but Layers hasn't taken nearly enough damage. It's a dive onto Zapman, and the priority target of the Leviathans has been picked. Where is everyone from the Leviathans, you ask? They're on the right. They're trying to get a kill onto Benji, and they'll be able to do so. But it took a lot, and that's going to allow Cyclone Spin and Layers to put pressure on this tier 2.
Pressure, they got it. This is theirs at this point. No shot anyone from the Leviathans can get here in time. And a much more valuable pick onto Zap. Benji he's the damage sponge at this point. He's going to continue to sponge whether or not he's super big. Making sure Zap isn't doing as much damage is more important.
Panatom is low. Paul is here as well. Shinto is going to be the damage dealer for the Leviathans for the next 10 seconds because Zapman still back and respawning, but the objective burn still quick enough with that Merlin that allows the Leviathans to think about it, but they think about it and they say no thank you to any further engagement here. Zapman will come back onto the map aggro with no beads for about a minute and a half, so it'll take a little bit to get in there.
He come back onto the map down 2 levels. Cyclone Spin.
What happened
Not
there?
gotten any kills.
Pyromancer taken down by the Titans, so finally a neutral objective goes there. Layers trapped in the wall by Yarkor. Rongyu jumps in alone, but the Tartarus Titans have gotten what they came for and they'll back off.
Very good through all stages. But it's harder to get beads, reset, punish 90 seconds later. It's much more fast-paced. And so if the Titans can use their relics really well, namely Layers has the most pressure on his relics, then it's going to be harder for the Leviathans.
5-on-5 brewing around this Oni Fury that the Titans secure. A roar alone, though. Benji with the push onto Zapman, who had to use the beads. Excavate finds half of Zapman's HP up into the sky. Goes Cyclone Spin, one more! Doesn't hit the last one, but Cyclone Spin much healthier than Zapman here. The Leviathans pressing the abort button. They want nothing else to do with this fight. Rongyu may just have to go down, and down he goes.
Cyclone doing too much right now, man. Finally getting paid on that late game ADC, level 20 for the ROM. And his ability to space so much
FG.
better than this Artemis matters quite a bit. Zap has no relics coming into this fight. Shinto does have his, but
Zap
it's
has
going to
ult.
be hard. Zap still has ult. That's got to be really well used. Use it to both get some CC immunity and ping pong through a fight.
Watch out, Shinto. Paul can half HP you at the drop of a hat. Panatom is in behind the Titans here as Zapman and Shinto group themselves up on the other side of the Fire Giant pit. And this is maybe the reasonable call for the Titans. Team Map minions were in the mid lane here for Paul. Sometimes that makes a difference, but easy to clear out for the Leviathan. Zap and Shinto are both on left. Didn't get that left wave pushing all that far up. Luckily, no real threat for the left side Phoenix of the Leviathans right now. But Rongyu, uh-oh, this could be bad. Or is it bad for Paul? Paul gets jumped on. Paul in the Ragnarok. Beads get used by the T-Mat, and he will back away. Panatom now knocked up by Layers. Avoids the pullback by Benji. The initial onslaught has been avoided by the Leviathans, but there is no counter engage.
And the Leviathans want to reset. This is a best case scenario for them. They just got CC immunity from a character who doesn't have it on demand.
Fire Giant restarted by the Tartarus Titans. Yarkor walks
Whoa!
forward, blinks in, finds Cyclone Spin. Cyclone Spin rolls on out after using the beads, but Yarkor's taken a whole lot of damage in the meantime as well. Taunts back through. Excavate from Benji does a lot of damage in the backline.
Here comes the
Yarkor
board.
walks forward. Look at the board from Zapman. Hits everyone from the Tartarus Titans, and Aurora gets brutalized by Rongyu, but the
What a
kill
ball!
in there, massive from Shinto, gets the kill onto Aurora. The Tartarus Titans got no health, and they scatter to the way, but Paul is stuck around, and Yarkor dies as well.
Zap's far forward, still has that Aegis, but has to be careful. All that damage, and the Leviathans only get one, and it's traded. So it's really not too bad for the Titans, but look at the bead situation for the Tartarus Titans coming out of that. A barren wasteland of purification beads
That board
scattered
was huge.
through that. And that's what Artemis does best. Fight. And now the Leviathans, even though they don't win that fight head on, they have to be advantageous here. Their carry still have relics, the other side doesn't.
The Titans are back on the Fire Giant. Rongyu has walked in,
Not
used
good
the
enough.
Ragnarok, but found absolutely nothing. Actually walks away. Worse for wear, but the Fire Giant has not been reset here. Shinto is in range.
Panatom
Fire
around.
Giant low. Panatom is around the backside, but he is being melted by the Titans, and he is taken down by the Titans. No more jungler for the Leviathans. Fire Giant still low here to jump in for Rongyu. The Titans secure the SG, but Rongyu, he jumps into death. Now it's Shinto who has to flicker away, and Cyclone Spin hits the last snipe. It's a minute on the death timers. The Leviathans only have 2.
I don't know what the Leviathans were doing, Dave. Panatom goes to the left side. Rongyu has his pick of the litter. Who do you want to get? Because
They're
no
going left.
one has beads, and his Ragnarok got nothing. He bit Layers. I believe it was as the Magi's came up but that's still not your priority target. They've got to be pickier than that. They've got to find a better target than just the jungler in that moment.
Cyclone Spin is not with the rest of the Tartarus Titans here. Zapman has to buy time. Yarkor has to buy time. 10 seconds on Rongyu, 10 seconds on Panatom, and the Titans will look no further here in Game 4.
Think back to the SK and the PK runs. Insane
this
base
is where it's
defense.
active,
Right, insane base defense is always part of the reverse sweeps.
Right, this is where it reactivates and keeps the Leviathans in the hopes for a Game 5 alive.
Or not.
Right side Phoenix, gone with no pressure from the Leviathans. Draugr buff did more than any of the Leviathans did on the right side.
Still have a minute 20 on this FG. I don't mind this call. Just reset real quick. Make sure we're as strong as can be. Grab this red buff for Cyclone. Allow him to have that extra damage. But
Whoa,
Shinto!
Oh no, that could end the game. That could end the set. And that could end the Phase 2 playoff. Shinto, the Aegis is huge. The Boulder chasing him down. But that has given all priority in the mid lane to the Tartarus Titans. This Phoenix is going to go down quickly. Shinto makes it back into the fountain. Rongyu will jump away. Layers has gotten the pin on the back end. Cyclone Spin starts it off. Could be the big sweep here for the Titans. They've run the table up to this point in the tournament so far. Can they take down the Leviathans in Game 4 in the Phase 2 playoff finals? Zapman stands strong and the Tartarus Titans will leave.
Not quite yet. They can't kill the Titan quite yet. Fire still up for 35. No wave for the Titans. By the time a fire wave gets here, there will only be a few seconds remaining on that FG, so they've got to make a choice.
I said leave, and they do not. The Tartarus Titans are still here, and they are still in a 4v5. Yarkor has blinked into the backline. He's gotten a stun onto Cyclone Zap, but Zapman is jumped on by Paul, who deletes him. Paul stepped up big. You can't forget about the Paul pass, and Paul's got a double, and the Tartarus Titans are your Phase 2 champions.
What a performance from the Titans. Can you believe a team that no one thought was doing anything positive as recently as a couple of weeks ago makes one change, and all of a sudden they are right there and locked in. And look at Aurora. He looks like he just got an extra nugget in his Happy Meal. That's as happy as he looks.
Yep. Zap was forced out. I mean, they just turned those fights around late.
Yeah, there was actually a couple scenarios where it just seemed like the Leviathan guys were just trying to get too much. There was the one fight right before, I think it was like the last Fire Giant, where Yorkor stepped up when they'd already gotten the one kill, and Yorkor ended up dying to Paul's damage. And it was just, it just didn't feel like they were taking their wins and were just trying to push the game farther. They were trying to get big wins out of not like much that was possible, and it was just not great play from the Leviathans.
Yeah, it just felt like they were trying to play a little bit faster than they were ready for. I mean, it was a small skirmish here where they find a win, and it's like, okay, we found it. Let's go to fire. No, you got to do a little bit more than that. Oh, okay, we got to pick here. Let's go for a tier 2. No, got to do a little bit more than that as well. The Leviathans just felt like they were playing a little bit too quick for their own good, and the Tartarus Titans weren't. They were biding their time, waiting for their opportunities. Like we said on the desk, given the right opportunity, Paul is going to pop off, and he does it here again. 5, 2, and 6 on the Tiamat. Look, man, I think the Tartarus Titans have had an ideology around them, this idea about them that this is a star-studded roster. Aurora, Cyclone Spin, Paul, Benji, and now Layers as well. All these guys have got the highest level of talent. They just had not shown it until this very event, or maybe the last couple of weeks they've been looking very good. But
It's actually made that, like, we're almost ending up losing a game. The one against the Kings, a couple mistakes were made, and then the one against the Leviathans, a couple mistakes were made. But other than that, they had a pretty good weekend of Smite and almost flawless games.
no, the Tartarus Titans were playing at damn near the peak of their game, right? These guys are looking incredibly strong. I will say maybe the Camelot Kings weren't playing at the peak of their game, but the Leviathans certainly brought it in games 3 and 4, and still was not enough for them to make the comeback here against the Tartarus Titans. Look, these guys have essentially now put a target on their backs. Worlds just around the corner. Tartarus Titans waking up. I think everybody's going to be studying up on what Benji, what Aurora, what Cyclone Spin's doing. Is Paul going to be allowed to play Tiamat in the near future? Probably not. Is Layers going to be allowed that Erlang Shen? He wasn't for the first couple of games of this set, and maybe not ever again.
Paul got Tiamat 6 times this weekend, and 4 of them were in the finals.
Yeah, let's
He got
stop
it
that.
4 times in a row. And I know a lot of people, when you go back, you look at Friday, people were talking about the Titans versus the Dragons. Some people consider it a pretty large upset, although they were right next to each other in the standings. It's the next day. I remember our prediction screen. A lot of people were really leaning heavy in on the Kings, and they get knocked out first. And then, of course, I know me and Aggro were leaning a little bit more towards the Leviathans. They almost made it happen. but they didn't quite. And so Taco stands supreme. I was torn between the Bolts, the Leviathans, and the Titans. And I chose Leviathans. I decided to hang my hat there, and obviously that's taken me down. So Taco gets to be the one, I guess, resting on her laurels, happy with this one. I think the Titans are going to be the happiest no matter what as they find themselves a win.